Many different ways, and when we use it with regards, if we were thinking about Imam's unity with God, that would be a problematic concept, because theologically, philosophically, nothing can have a union with God, because God is omnipresent, and thus inaccessible in that sense. Nothing can have a union with God in a very literal sense. So I'm not using the word unity in this, with this connotation. I don't want to be overly semantic, but important to clarify what I mean here. Thus, the theological principle of Tawheed, that is the belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this deep-seated recognition of the oneness of God, of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is reflected in the statement, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, that there is no power save that but God. Now when Imam al-Hussein recognized this, well, he was ma'soom, but nevertheless he had a deep-seated recognition and submission to this notion that there is no power but himself. There is no power but God. Thus it initiates him or pushes the person to submit towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I hope this will be a little bit more clear towards the end of my talk. But nevertheless, my interest is not in the semantics between unity and disunity and joining and co-joining and so on and so forth, but rather the manifestation of the reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the unity of the mind and the soul of Abu Abdullah on the day of Ashura. For example, how did Abu Abdullah Imam al-Hussein manifest this profound belief in the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That is one thing to have a belief, in a certain intellectual abstraction, whether it be, I believe God is one, I believe He has no partners, I believe Imams are 12, I believe prophets are 124,000, I believe in the Day of Judgment. And then there's another step, which is actualizing and manifesting the intellectual abstraction that rests in my mind. Right? And when we manifest this intellectual abstraction in our life, we have a sense of unity. Unity between what's in here and what our hands do. Right? Otherwise, we risk becoming munafiq, right? We risk becoming hypocrites. So, one of the beautiful verses which the brother actually began the lecture with reflects this very well. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe. So, O you who believe are now an intellectual abstraction, that they hold a belief in God. Right? They believe in God. They believe in a certain journey that they're on. Right? So that is an intellectual abstraction. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kunu qawamin bil qist. Now be something. Now take this intellectual abstraction that you have of belief, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, all those who believe, Kunu qawamin bil qist. Be standard bearers of justice and fair play in the world. Now when we have the Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu and the Kunu together, when we are able to say that we can participate in both groups, then we have a sense of unity in our life. There's no kind of willful schizophrenia or bipolar disorder that we're undergoing. And of course, Imam al-Hussein was the absolute paragon and light and emblem of what it means to have internal and external consistency. Thus, by being witnesses before God, shuhada lillah, even if it be over yourself, as the brother beautifully recited, it is manifesting a belief in God. That if we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe God created us for a purpose, we believe God created us to serve Him, then we manifest this belief by being just. For the sake of God, first and foremost upon ourselves, that is, we are fair with ourselves, and we demand consistency and fair play and justice from those around us, whether they be our parents or our close ones or our family or rich or poor. Right? Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sometimes I can go on a bit of a tangent. So the demand for self-consistency and communal consistency is extremely important. This really here I describe as an ethics of independence, which Imam Hussein manifested, which was he knew the truth and he was ready to become a social pariah in the name of that truth. Right? He had an ethics of independence. That in the face of injustice, in the face of communal blindness, in the face of communal terror, in the face of communal drunkenness, he stood up with an ethic of spiritual independence, saying enough is enough. The status quo cannot go on any longer. Thus, our dignity, I believe, rests in being able to have this sense of unity. That on one side, I believe in a certain set of ethics and morals that I hold to, as laid down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in the Sunnah of the Rasul and the Ahlul Bayt. But those ethics and morals are useless unless I take a stand to implement them in my life and in the community around me. Right? But the problem is, or rather the challenge is, when we attempt to implement these ethics, we have a chance of becoming social outcasts, social pariahs. Thus, critical loyalty requires very hard decisions, but it is what gives us virtue. It is what gives us meaning. And they have the phrase, rather it's a hadith from Imam Ali, which says, Al-mu'min aziz fi dinihi, that the believer is aziz, he is honorable, he is dignified in his way of life. I won't translate deen as religion here, in his way of life. In upholding, following and implementing the values and morals that he or she holds dear to themselves. And this is the only source of their izzah and their dignity in their life. Thus, our ability to do the right thing when it matters most, not when it doesn't necessarily matter. When it matters most, when all the chips are on the table. Our ability to do what matters most at that point in time is what will determine our virtue and our dignity. Because it is easy when times are good. Inshallah it is easy. Inshallah we don't struggle to implement virtues and ethics when times are good as well. But when times are tough, when I fear becoming a social outcast, when I fear becoming a social pariah, what shall I do then? Will I be كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله لو على أنفسهم? Will I be a standard of justice, of fair play? Well, even if it means I must testify against the own wrongs that I've committed, or against those whom I love. That is, when the going gets tough, do I have a convenient bipolar disorder? A convenient schizophrenia at that time. Now my morals and my desires they go on two separate roads. Right? And Imam al-Hussein is the absolute paragon. Of course, all the Aimma and the Holy Prophet and the Prophets of God are, but Imam al-Hussein is the paragon and emblem and shining light of what it means to be a unified human being. Right? Furthermore, in the face of hyper-emotionalism, in the face of a fear of rocking the boat, in the face of a fear of hyper-emotional reactions to me, tears and sadness and people hitting themselves and so on and so forth, will this change my mind? Will this perturb me from implementing justice? The answer is no. No sense of hyper-emotionalism or dramatics will move me from the course that I am on to ensure the unity between the values that I hold dear and the things that I do in my life. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.